Special Containment Procedures. SCP-052 is not removable from its environment. Its recurrent manifestations are, however, predictable. The 59th Street ABCD subway station in New York City is to be closed to civilian access between 23 hours and 1 hours on Saturdays under the guise of track maintenance. Mobile Task Force Gamma 6 maintains control of the station during this window. All accidental intrusions are to be suppressed, and any individuals observed disembarking from SCP-052 are to be taken into Foundation custody and transferred to Site-21. Civilians who merely witness the appearance are to be administered Class B amnestics and released. Description: SCP-052 manifests as a Type R4 New York City subway train. Records identify its construction as 1932, with official decommission in 1975. Despite this, the entity arrives precisely at 23:57 hours each Saturday on the Uptown AD track. SCP-052 is fully operational, bearing signage as an A train, and halts for 5 minutes. During this time, its doors open, though rarely do passengers emerge. Those that disembark claim to have boarded in widely divergent years, both past and future. Witnesses retain no recollection of time aboard, and the train vanishes immediately after doors close. Interrogation has revealed individuals emerging from as early as 1976 and as far forward as the 23rd century. Many are disoriented, convinced they entered a legitimate transit service. The anomaly resists deliberate infiltration. Several controlled Foundation tests placing operatives aboard have resulted in non-recovery, deaths in displaced timelines, or mutilated return with hostile messages. Following Incident 0524, O5 Command forbade further agent entry. Use of Class D personnel was also prohibited, citing the risks of their uncontrolled release into historical settings. Recovered passengers are processed according to temporal origin. Those from the past may be neutralized or reintegrated with amnestic support. Those from the future are indefinitely detained, given the potential risk to present causality. As of this report, 26 passengers remain in custody, including subjects claiming knowledge of catastrophic future SCP-related events, Foundation operations yet to occur, and entities whose mention has caused visible distress among personnel. The notebook attached to this file, recovered from Site-21's temporal quarantine archives, contains a record of anomalous testimonies, fragmented surveillance transcripts, and handwritten directives whose authorship remains uncertain. Internal analysis suggests partial redaction, implying that sections may have been deliberately censored by O5 Command to prevent broader Foundation awareness. The file you are reading represents only the officially sanctioned dossier. The notebook, however, indicates that SCP-052's appearances may not be confined to New York City, and that similar anomalies have been suppressed under alternate designations. Discovery records indicate that SCP-052 first came to Foundation attention in early 2008, following a series of reports filed with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority concerning a ghost train observed late at night. Civilian accounts described an old subway car, pristine in appearance, that pulled into the 59th Street station outside normal service hours. Several witnesses insisted they had seen individuals step off the train before it vanished from sight. Initial dismissals by transit authorities framed the incidents as urban legend or collective hallucination induced by fatigue. However, the consistency of the sightings, always occurring on Saturday nights at the same time, prompted further review. The first direct incident was reported on March 8, 2008, when a woman identified as an accountant returning from the theater disembarked from the anomaly. Interviews revealed she had boarded in July 2012, 4 years in her subjective future. Her disbelief at the date was profound. She insisted she had purchased her ticket that very evening in her own timeline. The anomaly of a passenger arriving from the future attracted immediate Foundation involvement. Mobile Task Force Gamma 6 was dispatched under the guise of transit police to secure the area. SCP-052 was designated and preliminary containment protocols enacted. By March 15th, a second passenger had appeared, this time originating from June 1976. The man, lost on the way to a well-known Manhattan nightclub, claimed to have entered the subway as normal. His attire, ticket stub, and slang were consistent with the era he described. Psychiatric assessment revealed severe disorientation but no memory of transit aboard the train itself. The possibility of an ongoing temporal breach became undeniable. O5 Command authorized full-scale investigation and ordered the systematic closure of the station during manifestation hours. Eyewitness testimony collected from uninvolved bystanders revealed striking similarities. The train appears immaculate, in stark contrast to the aging infrastructure of the subway system. Signage always identifies it as an uptown A train. The arrival is accompanied by faint mechanical noises inconsistent with modern transit equipment, and witnesses often describe a sensation of pressure change in the air, as if the station itself were briefly displaced. Civilians who reported seeing the train were administered amnestics. The attached notebook, logged as document 052N, contains early Foundation field notes. Pages detail hurried observations, sketches of the R4 model cars, and timestamps aligning precisely with Saturday night appearances. Several entries are written in different hands, suggesting multiple agents contributed to the log. Certain annotations warn against boarding, noting risk of temporal contamination and loss of operatives. Other pages reference time-lost civilians and outline ethical debates on whether to release, detain, or neutralize them. The first indication of potential hostility came with the recovery of Agent. On June 27, 2009. Deployed under controlled conditions, he re-emerged 2 weeks later without his hands, carrying a note reading simply, "Send no more." The chilling directive, combined with the mutilation, suggested intelligence within the anomaly actively resisting intrusion. Following this, O5 Command restricted further tests. Civilian media records show no official acknowledgement of these events. The MTA quietly registered the closure of the 59th Street station as routine maintenance. But a growing urban legend among New Yorkers about the Saturday Phantom train was noted. Despite suppression, sporadic references appear online, often dismissed as fiction. The notebook includes printouts of archived forum discussions and blog posts that Foundation web crawlers flagged for deletion. One recurring username, traced but never identified, posted eerily accurate schedules of SCP-052 appearances weeks before they occurred. Cross-reference indicates the posts ceased after Foundation intervention, but the identity of the poster remains undetermined. By late 2009, containment was stabilized. The anomaly's behavior remained predictable, but its origins remained unresolved. Records of a train built in 1932 and scrapped in 1975 aligned with its appearance, yet there is no explanation for its continued operation decades later. The notebook's early pages speculate on two possibilities: a localized temporal distortion anchored to the 59th Street station, or an artifact of deliberate design, an engineered anomaly rather than a natural rift. Neither hypothesis has been confirmed. The atmosphere among the early containment team was one of unease. Reports describe growing reluctance among personnel stationed at the site. Some noted that when SCP-052 arrives, the sound of the brakes, the metallic clatter, and the dim glow of its interior lights carry with them a sensation of déjà vu, as though the observers themselves had once boarded but could not recall when. Others reported fleeting auditory hallucinations, voices calling their names from inside the cars, though visual inspection always showed the train empty. The discovery phase closed with the establishment of permanent Saturday night lockdown and a rotating detachment of Gamma-6 agents assigned to the station. SCP-052 was confirmed as Euclid class. The notebook ends its discovery section with a single underlined line, written in red ink. It is not simply a train, it is a schedule, and something is keeping it. The Foundation's first structured investigation into SCP-052 began under the supervision of Site-21's Department of Temporal Phenomena. The approach was methodical. Document appearances, record environmental changes, and cautiously, attempt controlled boarding. Early surveillance logs show that the train never deviated from its schedule. Each Saturday at precisely 23:57, the R4 model slid into the station, its condition as flawless as the night before. Infrared and electromagnetic readings detected brief spikes during each manifestation, suggesting a localized rift rather than a physical vehicle traveling along normal tracks. The first insertion, designated Test 0521, placed Agent Callahan aboard the anomaly on May 31, 2009. Observers confirmed he entered without resistance. When the doors shut, the train disappeared as expected. Weeks passed with no sign of the agent. His return never came. Interdepartmental memoranda reveal mounting tension. Was Callahan lost in another time, erased from history, or still traveling aboard a train that may never stop? His family was informed of his death in the line of duty under fabricated circumstances. The second insertion, Test 0522, attempted to refine parameters. Agent Walters boarded on June 6, 2009. Surveillance showed the same procedure: entry, door closure, disappearance. Yet unlike Callahan, Walters resurfaced indirectly. Archival police records from 1980 reported a violent incident in Queens involving a man matching his description. He had been killed in a confrontation, decades before his recruitment into the Foundation. The paradox was noted, but no method existed to verify further details. Foundation analysts debated whether SCP-052 transported him backward intact, or whether fragments of his timeline were grafted unnaturally into the past. A third test escalated tensions. Agent Ruiz entered SCP-052 on June 13, 2009. When the anomaly reappeared 2 weeks later, Ruiz stepped off, though not as expected. His hands had been surgically removed. Folded in his coat pocket was a note written in block capitals: "Send no more." Ruiz, dazed and incoherent, remembered nothing. Under hypnosis, fragments of speech surfaced: metallic corridors, voices speaking in languages not identifiable, and an overwhelming sense of being observed. The details were too fractured to construct a full narrative, yet disturbing enough that O5 Command ordered a moratorium on further agent boarding. This decision was controversial. The Temporal Research Unit argued that halting experimentation squandered an unprecedented opportunity to study causality in real time. Ethics Committee representatives countered that deliberately sacrificing operatives to an anomaly with hostile intent violated every containment principle. Heated exchanges filled the internal record. One redacted memorandum hints at an unauthorized attempt by personnel to board SCP-052 outside scheduled tests. The result, referenced only briefly, describes a body thrown violently from the train onto the tracks, mutilated beyond recognition. The notebook connected to these early operations records impressions from unnamed agents stationed on site. One entry, written hastily in pencil, describes the sensation of standing at the edge of a deep tunnel, hearing a whistle from centuries away. Another notes that when the train doors open, the interior appears subtly different each time. Sometimes brightly lit, sometimes dim and flickering, sometimes with a faint mechanical hum, like machinery buried deep underground. Despite the prohibition, internal documents reveal quiet pressure from O59 to continue experiments using expendable subjects. The proposal suggested deploying Class D personnel, arguing that any impact of their displacement into the past would be negligible. Yet counter-arguments prevailed. What if even one of these individuals altered a key event? Could their release spawn divergent timelines? Or worse, could they provide dangerous knowledge to factions in the past or future? The decision was tabled indefinitely. Still, The Foundation could not remain passive. Teams began monitoring environmental variables during each arrival. Seismic sensors installed under 59th Street detected subtle vibrations not aligned with train movement. Air quality sensors recorded sudden changes in pressure and temperature, as though the space itself bent slightly inward before snapping back. Audio devices picked up faint echoes resembling announcements over a subway PA system, but always distorted. Phrases in English, Albanian, or unidentified dialects. On one recording, a female voice can be heard clearly stating, "Doors closing. Next stop, nowhere." By the close of the early investigation phase, a consensus emerged. SCP-052 was not merely a vehicle, but a temporal junction. Each appearance brought the risk of cross-contamination, people, languages, and knowledge leaking in both directions. The notebook's final entries from this stage carry a tone of dread. One page simply reads, "We are not watching the train. The train is watching us." The anomaly's detailed description was formally compiled after nearly 2 years of continuous surveillance. SCP-052 manifests as a New York City R4 subway train, a model built in the 1930s and officially dismantled in the mid-1970s. The discrepancy is stark. Transit records confirm the train was scrapped, yet each appearance shows it in flawless, operational condition. Paint unchipped, metal polished, interiors unaged. Unlike normal rolling stock, it generates no identifying mechanical faults or wear patterns. Maintenance logs from the period of its supposed operation were re-examined, and no record matches the precise car numbers observed during manifestations. Externally, SCP-052 resembles a standard uptown A train. The headlights, signage, and entry doors operate as if connected to the city's grid, though no power source has ever been detected. Energy readings suggest the train generates its own field, a low-level radiation spike occurring in the seconds before arrival. Surveillance cameras capture a distortion effect as the entity emerges, like heat haze across the platform. Inside, fluorescent bulbs flicker at inconsistent rhythms, but the cars remain empty except when passengers disembark. No Foundation team has successfully documented interior layout beyond brief visual confirmation. Every attempt to cross the threshold results in disappearance along with the train. The doors open automatically upon arrival, remaining ajar for approximately 5 minutes. Those who step off describe no memory of boarding, yet all insist they had entered what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary subway. Their accounts diverge only in era. Some came from the mid-1970s, others from decades ahead. One subject, identified as passenger 0526, claimed to originate from the year 2124. His clothing, language, and fragmented knowledge of SCP phenomena suggested authenticity, though cross-examination left unsettling questions. Physiological analysis of recovered passengers reveals subtle anomalies. Baseline medical exams show irregular cellular aging. Microscopic examination finds tissues either slightly too young or too old compared to chronological appearance. In 2 cases, fingernail growth patterns indicated a skipped period of several years. One passenger, a tourist recovered in 2009, now speaks only Albanian despite being a native English speaker with no prior exposure to the language. Psychological evaluations reveal recurring symptoms: disorientation, derealization, and persistent nightmares of endless tunnels. Many describe standing in the train corridor, but being unable to move, as though paralyzed, while shadows outside the windows observed them in silence. The environment of SCP-052 itself appears mutable. Witnesses report differences in interior conditions. In some accounts, seats are upholstered and clean. In others, fabric is torn, lights dimmed, and graffiti unfamiliar to any documented era scrawled across the walls. A recovered notebook page, dated June 2009, describes rows of windows showing not stations but landscapes, mountains, oceans, and skies with stars that do not match our constellations. If accurate, SCP-052 may not be confined to terrestrial transit at all. Most disturbing are the implications that the anomaly possesses awareness. The mutilated return of Agent Ruiz with the warning note, "Send no more," suggests deliberate action, not incidental temporal displacement. His wounds bore surgical precision, performed with tools unavailable in the field. Whoever, or whatever, resides within SCP-052 demonstrated both hostility and knowledge of Foundation attempts. Later reports of passengers thrown violently from the train confirm an escalating resistance to intrusion. Acoustic monitoring further complicates matters. Microphones placed discreetly along the platform record faint sounds emanating from within the anomaly, indistinct announcements, rhythmic mechanical clattering, and, on 3 occasions, voices calling the names of station personnel. In one case, an agent swore he heard his own voice echoing from inside the cars, repeating words he had not yet spoken. These occurrences, though unverifiable, heighten the sense that SCP-052 is not a passive temporal artifact, but an active intelligence, or a system guided by one. Current description protocols classify it as a localized temporal nexus, manifesting in the guise of a train. Whether it is a vessel, a machine, or a construct designed to resemble mass transit remains undetermined. The notebook's redacted pages repeatedly underline one chilling conclusion. The train is not traveling through time. Time is traveling through the train. The first systematic psychological evaluations of passengers recovered from SCP-052 revealed consequences that extended far beyond simple displacement. Victims displayed profound alterations in memory, language, and perception of reality. While they maintained coherent autobiographical narratives up to the point of boarding, every subject reported an immediate blank interval once the train's doors closed. This void persisted regardless of hypnosis, drug therapy, or neurological stimulation. Yet across multiple interviews, fragments emerged, recurring motifs of corridors stretching endlessly, of lights that dimmed and flared as though alive, and of unseen presences pressing against the glass. Passenger 0521, the accountant displaced from 2012 to 2008, exemplifies these effects. Though her body was unharmed, she described persistent nightmares of hearing an announcement in a language I don't speak, but somehow knowing it was calling my name. When exposed to recordings of subway ambience, her pulse rate spiked violently, accompanied by tremors and acute panic. A psychiatric note in the notebook observes that she was not afraid of trains, but of the idea of schedules, calendars, clocks, the concept of recurrence. This thematic phobia has since appeared in at least 4 other recovered passengers. Passenger 0522, taken from 1976, displayed an opposite syndrome. He retained his humor and orientation, but reacted aggressively when questioned about the train's windows. Multiple times he attempted to scratch his eyes, insisting that what I saw wasn't meant for eyes. Not then, not now. His restraint became necessary after repeated self-harm attempts. Psychiatric evaluation classified him as a temporal dissociation case. His mind carried an imprint of things unseen by his era, which his psyche attempted to excise. The most unsettling case remains passenger 0523, a tourist from 2014 who, upon recovery in 2009, spoke exclusively in Albanian. Prior to his encounter, he had no contact with the language, nor genetic or familial ties to the region. Linguistic tests revealed fluency at a native level, while his ability to understand English had vanished entirely. Hypnosis elicited nonsensical imagery: oceans inside tunnels, crowds without faces, and doors that opened into black air. Foundation linguists speculated that SCP-052 imposes linguistic substitution as part of its temporal mediation, but no theory accounts for why specific languages manifest. The notebook records one researcher's chilling remark: "What if the train is teaching them the language it speaks?" Physical consequences varied. 2 passengers showed accelerated aging in localized tissues, as though decades had passed for a single organ while the rest of the body remained consistent. Another displayed regressive effects. Blood work revealed telomeres extended beyond expected range, suggesting partial cellular rejuvenation. Medical staff cautioned that such anomalies could not be maintained. The subject later collapsed from multi-organ failure consistent with catastrophic biological imbalance. Behavioral changes were equally alarming. Many passengers expressed obsession with the train's schedule, requesting the exact time of its next arrival, even after being told it was classified. Several attempted to escape custody during those hours, as though drawn back by compulsion. Passenger 0527, recovered in 2010, wrote repeatedly on his cell walls, "It left without me this time, it will not next time." Security logs show he died by self-strangulation on a Saturday night, precisely at 23:57, as SCP-052 manifested miles away. Doctors documented a common thread. Recovered passengers suffered from severe chronophobia, the fear of passing time itself. This was not a rational phobia, but a visceral reaction. Even the sight of a wristwatch triggered panic attacks. Several begged to have clocks removed from their holding cells. One refused to speak until all personnel turned their watches face down. The notebook includes a psychiatrist's handwritten margin note. They don't fear death. They fear the possibility that they are already dead in another time. Over time, exposure effects extended subtly to Foundation staff. Agents stationed repeatedly at the 59th Street platform reported insomnia, irritability, and an uncanny sense of déjà vu. One agent confessed in a private report that he felt he had been on the train once, though no record exists. Another claimed to have dreamt of boarding SCP-052 weeks before his assignment. While amnestics temporarily alleviated symptoms, recurrence was common. The possibility that SCP-052 influences not only its passengers, but also its observers, is now considered credible. The cumulative conclusion of these evaluations was grim. SCP-052 is not a benign temporal anomaly, but an active psychological vector. It imposes memory corruption, phobic compulsions, and linguistic alterations as part of its passage. Victims are not merely displaced, they are rewritten, fragment by fragment, into something else. The notebook summarizes this stage of study with a single sentence, underlined twice. The train carries more than people. It carries contagion of the mind. Systematic experimentation with SCP-052 was initiated in an attempt to determine whether the anomaly could be mapped, controlled, or at least partially understood. The earliest tests followed conventional Foundation procedure: send in observers, record their findings, and monitor for anomalies. However, the results rapidly devolved into a sequence of failures that highlighted the train's resistance to investigation. The first recorded experiment, designated 052-EXA, involved placing a GPS tracker and high-frequency radio transmitter aboard the anomaly. The devices vanished along with the train. No signal was ever received again. 2 weeks later, during a scheduled manifestation, the transmitter was found embedded in the concrete of the station wall, crushed and fused as if molten, yet without evidence of heat damage to surrounding materials. The implication: SCP-052 can reject foreign instruments by expelling them violently into baseline reality. Subsequent tests escalated in ambition. In 052-EXB, Agent Callahan boarded with a head-mounted camera and biometric sensors. As noted, he never returned. Review of the linked telemetry provided a chilling glimpse. The feed cut to static the instant the doors closed, but for exactly 0.7 seconds before failure, the footage showed the train interior shifting. Seats melted into smooth metallic walls, windows darkened, and a faint silhouette, a figure indistinct but humanoid, appeared at the far end of the car. After that, nothing. This scrap of evidence became the only direct visual record from inside SCP-052, and even it was questioned, some suggesting digital corruption rather than true imagery. In 052-EXC, A canister of fluorescent dye was rolled into the anomaly moments before departure. Upon its reappearance a week later, station walls bore faint streaks of glowing residue as though the canister had burst against impossible surfaces during transit. Analysis revealed molecular restructuring of the dye, with isotopes not normally occurring in our reality. Temporal physicists proposed that the substance had been exposed to parallel universes and fractured across timelines, leaving behind only fragments. The final sanctioned human test, 052-EXD, resulted in the mutilated return of Agent Ruiz, and the infamous note, "Send no more." Following this, O5 Command declared a moratorium on agent boarding. The experiment's aftermath became a touchstone in debates about the ethics of exploration. Was the mutilation a message from an intelligence within the train, or an automated defense against intrusion? The note's perfect English contradicted the garbled languages reported by passengers, implying calculated communication. Despite official prohibition, not all researchers complied. The notebook contains evidence of unsanctioned trials. One entry describes smuggling a Class D prisoner onto the platform under sedation, timing his release to coincide with SCP-052's arrival. No official record of this test exists, yet the entry claims the subject screamed, "It's the same faces again," before being pulled inside by unseen forces. Weeks later, a janitor discovered bloodied prison clothing in a maintenance tunnel near the station, decades out of date in design. Whether this was coincidence or an artifact of the unauthorized test is unknown. Another attempt involved placing written questions on notepaper within the train, addressed to whomever controls this vessel. The train reappeared with the paper returned, but every word was replaced with mirror-scripted text, resembling the original handwriting. Linguists noted the letters were written backward and inverted, as if reflected. Deciphering revealed only one coherent phrase repeated dozens of times. "You are late." Instrumental experiments continued in less invasive forms. Audio sensors recorded frequency ranges beyond human hearing during SCP-052's presence, peaking in patterns that resembled Morse code. Decryption suggested fragments. "Stop, not passengers. Schedule holds." Whether this is genuine communication or random coincidence remains unsettled. The failures produced mounting frustration. Research teams pushed for more aggressive strategies, including attempts to physically anchor SCP-052 with magnetic clamps to prevent disappearance. In one instance, a clamp was indeed affixed to the train's undercarriage. When the anomaly vanished, the clamp remained, sheared in half, edges warped in ways inconsistent with mechanical stress. Metallurgical analysis found crystalline structures arranged in geometries unknown to modern science. The cumulative result of these efforts was sobering. SCP-052 could not be studied through direct physical intrusion. Every attempt either erased data, destroyed equipment, or punished intruders with calculated brutality. The notebook's experiment section concludes grimly, with a scrawled remark attributed to a frustrated researcher. "We are trying to measure a clock by climbing inside its gears. It does not want us there." The archive of recovered materials linked to SCP-052 is scattered, contradictory, and unnervingly personal. The notebook catalogs a series of documents, letters, transcripts, and fragments that survived contact with the anomaly. Though many entries are heavily redacted in official files, the handwritten copies preserved within the notebook remain intact, offering unsettling glimpses into what occurs beyond the doors of the train. The first is a diary fragment attributed to passenger 0523. Found hidden in his clothing during intake, the fragment was scrawled on subway ticket stubs, stitched together with thread. The text reads, "The windows do not show the city anymore. At first I thought it was tunnels, but then the tunnels grew stars. The stars blink in patterns, like eyes. When the lights flicker, the car is full. When they steady, I am alone." The handwriting alternates between careful cursive and erratic slashes, as if written in haste during moments of panic. Another record is a transcribed interrogation of passenger 0526, the self-identified Level 4 supervisor from the SCP Federation, originating from 2124. His testimony remains one of the most detailed accounts of future Foundation operations. Among his claims, that a containment breach in 2092 released a virulent strain of SCP-008, resulting in a global zombie plague, that a classified SCP, still unrecovered in our timeline, could only be destroyed by combining FOIR data expunged with HER data expunged, and that he once worked under the infamous Dr. Jack Bright. The credibility of these claims remains disputed, but cross-referencing confirms several predictions align with anomalies discovered years after his detainment. Audio logs recovered during unsanctioned monitoring add to the strangeness. One transcript from a hidden recorder at the 59th Street station captures a distorted announcement. Next stop, garbled. You were not meant to know. At the same moment, the device recorded the sound of multiple footsteps leaving the car, though only one passenger was visually confirmed. Another log captures a male voice, unmistakably similar to a stationed agent, whispering, "Help me," before dissolving into static. The agent in question insisted he had never spoken those words. Perhaps the most disquieting document is a letter found in the pocket of Agent Ruiz upon his mutilated return. The message, cleanly typed, unsigned, read, "Your insistence endangers the cycle. There are no passengers. There are only placeholders. Send no more." The use of bureaucratic language echoes Foundation directives themselves, raising suspicion that the author possessed intimate knowledge of internal protocol. Handwritten annotations in the notebook reveal further suppressed materials. One page describes a surveillance photograph allegedly capturing the interior of SCP-052 when its doors glitched and remained open for an extended period. The photo, since classified, showed an empty car with dozens of faint outlines seated in perfect rows, transparent figures, their faces blurred, all turned toward the camera. Marginalia beneath the description read, "They were waiting for us, not traveling." Recovered items from passengers compound the mystery. From one, a pocket watch that ticks backward, yet keeps perfect counter time when inverted. From another, a fragment of newspaper dated 2204, commemorating the 300th anniversary special A-line, with articles referencing political entities that do not exist in our present timeline. Yet another carried a token stamped SCP Transit Authority, with a logo eerily similar to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's, but altered with recursive geometric patterns impossible to reproduce mechanically. All these artifacts, testimonies, and transcripts converge on one theme. SCP-052 is not simply transporting people through time, it is curating them. Passengers appear not at random, but as deliberate selections, bearing knowledge, language, or objects meant to be deposited into Foundation custody. The notebook's final recovered document underscores this suspicion. A loose scrap, written in red ink, unsigned. You believe you contain it. In truth, it contains you. Internal Foundation files concerning SCP-052 reveal an escalating pattern of disagreement, censorship, and outright cover-ups. The more material was gathered, the less consistent the official record became. The notebook preserves the traces of these disputes in ways the sanitized database never could. Early containment staff submitted conflicting reports on whether SCP-052 should remain under Euclid classification. Some argued for Keter, citing the clear intelligence behind the mutilated returns and the direct threats issued. Others lobbied for SAFE, reasoning that its schedule was predictable and contained. Heated exchanges circulated across Site-21 communications. One memo, reproduced in the notebook, includes a furious handwritten note in the margin. Predictable does not mean harmless. We are mistaking punctuality for safety. The Ethics Committee raised concerns about the indefinite detainment of passengers from the past. Official protocol mandated amnestic reintegration when possible, yet multiple individuals were held indefinitely, justified under the nebulous threat of timeline disruption. One psychiatrist's formal objection states bluntly, "We are holding people hostage to a future that has not yet happened." The objection was redacted in the final file, but its presence in the notebook confirms at least one internal struggle over how far temporal paranoia should extend. Disputes intensified after the arrival of passenger 526, whose claims about the Foundation's future proved too specific to ignore. Several high-ranking researchers urged exploiting his knowledge, even if it meant violating his indefinite containment order. Others countered that interaction risked creating a paradoxical feedback loop where the Foundation's own protocols became shaped by self-fulfilling prophecy. 059's final directive was terse. Subject remains in custody. Do not ask questions you are not prepared to hear answered. Evidence of cover-up surfaces repeatedly. The mutilated return of Agent Ruiz was reported in the official database as accidental trauma sustained during anomalous transit. The note in his pocket, "Send no more," is entirely omitted in the redacted version. Similarly, the audio recording of the distorted announcement, "Next stop, you were not meant to know," appears nowhere in official archives. The notebook preserves transcriptions marked "erased from file" in red ink, suggesting deliberate excision by higher command. There are also signs of deliberate disinformation. A document within the notebook shows edits to passenger logs. Names altered, dates shifted, origins rewritten. A researcher's private annotation reads, "We are lying to ourselves to make the data neat. The anomaly does not care about neat." Even the head count of recovered passengers is inconsistent. Official files report 26, yet the notebook references 28, 2 of whom are described in detail but erased from the database. Their fates are unknown. One particularly damning entry is a letter drafted by Dr. Hensley, lead investigator during the first containment years. Addressed to 05 Command, it warns, "The train is not ours to study. It is studying us. Every attempt to probe deeper has been met with escalation. By suppressing what we have found, we are creating a blindness that favors the anomaly, not the Foundation." The letter is stamped, "Unsent." Paranoia infected the entire chain of command. Some staff believed SCP-052 itself was orchestrating the cover-ups, embedding influence in the minds of those tasked with documenting it. Others whispered that senior officials deliberately obscured the file to conceal their own clandestine dealings with the train. The notebook contains a chilling, marginal note, in handwriting unrecognized by any known staff. You cannot redact a schedule. It will always arrive. By the time the disputes quieted, a consensus emerged, but not out of resolution. Rather, silence was enforced. 05 Command restricted all access to raw logs, limiting future researchers to a cleansed, safe version of the file. References to the notebook itself were purged from Site 21's index. What remains today in official channels is a hollowed version of the truth. The real record, the one preserved in smuggled annotations and hidden copies, shows a Foundation fractured by its own fear of what SCP-052 represents. Not a train out of time, but a mirror held against the very machinery of containment. The escalation phase of SCP-052's containment history is marked by the incidents that finally convinced even the most skeptical administrators that the anomaly was not only aware of intrusion, but capable of retaliation. While its manifestations had previously followed a pattern of eerie predictability, a string of events beginning in late 2009 broke that fragile sense of control and redefined the threat entirely. The first major breach occurred when an unauthorized junior researcher attempted to board SCP-052 despite explicit prohibition. Security logs show that he forced his way past agents during the 5-minute opening window, shouting that the answers are inside. Surveillance cameras captured him stepping into the first car before the doors closed. When the train reappeared the following week, his body was found hurled across the platform, landing 10 meters away with catastrophic injuries. Autopsy reports described trauma inconsistent with blunt impact, bones twisted as though compressed by unnatural pressure, and tissue samples displaying isotopic anomalies. The official file marks the cause of death as severe structural displacement. The notebook adds a darker note, handwritten by a guard who witnessed the event. The body didn't fall, it was thrown. Soon after, anomalies extended beyond passengers. On 2 occasions, SCP-052 arrived several seconds ahead of schedule. Agents on site reported feeling an immense atmospheric pressure, as if the station itself was dragged forward in time to meet the train rather than the other way around. Instruments registered microseismic pulses during these appearances, damaging sensitive sensors. The fear among staff was palpable. If the schedule could shift even slightly, the possibility of wider manifestations, other stations, other cities, could not be ruled out. The most infamous escalation, however, came with the disappearance of the Saturday Night Watch team in January 2010. SCP-052 appeared as expected, yet when the doors closed, 3 stationed operatives were simply gone. Surveillance footage shows them standing guard on the platform, seconds before vanishing into thin air without boarding. The train disappeared at the same instant. No trace of the agents was ever recovered. Internal memoranda speculate whether SCP-052 had widened its passenger net, actively selecting individuals beyond those who entered its cars. This theory remains classified, though whispered often among personnel assigned to the site. The psychological toll peaked after an event in February 2010, when the anomaly deposited passenger 0526, the so-called supervisor from 2124. His testimony about catastrophic future breaches destabilized staff morale, feeding rumors that the Foundation itself would collapse under anomalies it had not yet encountered. Multiple agents requested transfers, citing nightmares and persistent auditory hallucinations of train arrivals outside scheduled hours. Some swore they heard SCP-052 passing beneath sites hundreds of miles from New York. These reports, though unconfirmed, were consistent enough to merit serious concern. The notebook preserves the most chilling escalation, an unverified transcript marked "Erased, do not circulate." According to the account, during one manifestation, SCP-052's interior lights revealed silhouettes seated in every row. Unlike previous appearances, the figures were not transparent, but solid, motionless, all staring forward. When the train vanished, an emergency radio transmission from an on-site agent captured a single phrase, spoken in a voice identical to his own. "Next week, it will be you." That agent resigned the following day and later disappeared under unexplained circumstances. By mid-2010, SCP-052's containment perimeter was expanded. Entire blocks of the subway were sealed under pretexts of construction, while additional task force units were assigned. Still, the sense of control had evaporated. The Foundation could keep civilians away, but they could not prevent the anomaly from escalating at will. Officially, it was still classified as Euclid. Unofficially, within Site 21 halls, it had earned a different designation, whispered in dread: the train that chooses. The escalation phase concluded not with resolution, but with a grim acknowledgement. 059 issued a private directive, later smuggled into the notebook. Understand this: SCP-052 is not a vehicle we contain. It is a schedule that contains us. Each breach, each mutilated return, each warning is not a failure of procedure. It is the anomaly reminding us that we are already on board. The final phase of SCP-052's documentation centers on the Foundation's uneasy resolution, not the solving of its mystery, but the acceptance of its permanence. By 2011, after repeated failures and mounting losses, 05 Command decreed that no further experiments were to be conducted. The anomaly's classification remained Euclid, but internally, many staff referred to it as unclassifiable, a euphemism acknowledging that it could not be forced into standard categories. The Foundation did not master SCP-052, it merely learned how to live with its recurrence. Containment procedures became strictly defensive. The 59th Street Station was permanently placed under controlled closure during the anomaly's schedule, reinforced with fabricated stories of ongoing track work. Civilian exposure was minimized, and those rare few who slipped through were quickly silenced with amnestics. The Foundation's task narrowed to damage control, preventing panic, collecting the displaced, and ensuring that knowledge carried from future passengers did not destabilize present operations. Passengers remained the most volatile variable. Those originating from the past were quietly erased from history through either amnestic reintegration or indefinite custody. Those from the future became permanent detainees, held in conditions designed not only for security, but for secrecy. It was feared that even accidental disclosure of their knowledge could warp events to come. Passenger 0526, whose testimony about the zombie plague and other anomalies still circulates in whispers, was officially declared non-existent. Unofficially, his cell remains active in Site-21 sublevels. The notebook notes his defiance, a scrawled message on his wall during routine inspection. "You cannot lock up tomorrow." The mutilated returns of Foundation operatives effectively ended all attempts to study the interior of SCP-052. What was once framed as exploration became recognized as provocation. The warning note, the thrown bodies, the silent silhouettes in the windows, each signaled that the anomaly had limits it enforced with precision. When 059 issued the order to halt all boardings, it was not a gesture of caution, but of surrender. The internal memorandum, partially preserved in the notebook, states, "The train has expressed its will. We will not challenge it again." Reclassification discussions arose after the unexplained disappearance of 3 agents on the platform, sparking fears that SCP-052's reach was expanding. Some demanded it be labeled Keter, arguing that any anomaly capable of abducting personnel without contact was a threat beyond containment. Others countered that its predictability still warranted Euclid. In the end, bureaucratic inertia prevailed, and the official file has not changed. Still, among staff, the whispered consensus is darker. The train is no longer considered an anomaly in containment, but a fixture of reality, one that may long outlast the Foundation itself. The broader implications remain unresolved. If SCP-052 is a temporal junction, then its existence proves causality is porous, fragile, subject to forces that treat time as a series of stops on a line. If it is an intelligence, then humanity is merely its passenger. The notebook closes with a single observation left unredacted, underlined 3 times in red ink. Every schedule has a terminus. Whether this refers to the eventual end of SCP-052's appearances or to a final event for all who have encountered it is unknown. The present status of SCP-052 is one of enforced ignorance. The anomaly still arrives each Saturday night, its doors opening for 5 minutes, its interior glimpsed but never entered. Passengers still emerge, bewildered, displaced, rewritten, and are quietly removed from the world they believed they knew. Agents still stand guard, silent and uneasy, knowing that to watch the train too long is to feel themselves already inside it. The official file describes a predictable anomaly safely contained. The notebook tells another story, that the Foundation is not containing a train, but participating in its timetable. Resolution, such as it is, lies only in endurance. SCP-052 cannot be destroyed, rerouted, or negotiated with. It is not an object, but a schedule written into the fabric of reality, repeating until its unknown terminus arrives. Until that moment, the Foundation's task is to keep the doors closed to the public, to absorb those who slip through, and to prepare for the day when the anomaly's cycle changes. For as one anonymous annotation in the notebook warns, trains run on time until they don't.